So again, welcome everybody. We are here with Kelly Draggoo and Theresa Busher from Social Security Administration to speak to us about Social Security Disability 101. This is part of a monthly webinar series that DCBDD is initiating. Supports through the lifespans. So every month we will have a webinar and we will indicate kind of which target population is that webinar is for. So this is for everybody. This is a applicable and relevant topic for all the folks that we serve and their support teams. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Theresa and Kelly to give us some more information on Social Security.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our Social Security 101. We wish we were.
I'm Kelly Draggoo. I'm a public affairs specialist for Social Security. I'm in Cincinnati. Theresa Busher, who you started to hear from there off and on, is public affairs specialist in the Dayton area for Social Security. And together, she and I try to offer these presentations and co-present as often as we can, because we both cover the territory of Central and Southern Ohio and a little bit of Southeastern Ohio, Southeastern Indiana. So usually when you're getting education and outreach from Social Security in this area, it's Theresa and I. So welcome. Thank you so much. You see our email addresses on the screen. If you need to reach out to us when we get finished today or in the coming days, by all means do so. Our email addresses are our first dot last name at ssa.gov. Just give us a good week or two to get back to you. If you don't hear from us, go ahead and bother us again. I shouldn't say bother. You're not bothering us. Go ahead and send us another email if we don't respond to you right away. We're oftentimes caught up in webinars and things like this, and we lose track of our emails sometimes. So let me go ahead and move forward with what our agenda looks like today. We always give a disclaimer that the information that we're talking about is accurate as of when we're talking. So this is May of 2025. We are recording. This is on Facebook Live. So if you're looking at this at a later date, things can change. So we want you to make sure that you're always looking at our website, ssa.gov, to get the most up-to-date information before you, just take a look at what's on these slides. So make sure you're looking for the most up-to-date information if you're looking at a later date. And participation in our presentation doesn't constitute endorsement by Social Security for one organization over another. We love everybody that we speak to, and so we provide this information free of charge to everyone. Be sure that you don't share any personal information today. We don't want anybody's dates of birth or Social Security numbers. We don't want yours or anybody that you represent given today. So make sure you're not sharing that type of information. This is how we plan to flow along today. First, we're going to talk about contacting Social Security and the My Social Security account. We'll go into what Social Security's definition of disability is, and we'll talk about the differences between SSI and SSDI. The acronyms are very similar, but as you'll see, the programs are very different. And so we'll try to show you some of what those nuances are. When I get done talking about all of that, I'm going to hand things over to Theresa, and she'll come back then and talk about how to file an application, what the disability determination process looks like, and what happens after a decision is made. If you've been approved, how do we start the payments? What goes on with making the payments, and after somebody is in pay for some time, what do we do then? And if somebody gets denied through this process, how can they file an appeal? So Theresa will come back and talk about that at the second half of this presentation. So let's move forward and talk about contacting Social Security. At the most basic level, we want to make sure that you are aware of how to reach us. So the website is really the best tool for you to have if you don't want to call or go into an office. So go on to ssa.gov. You can find all kinds of information here, including ways to apply for your benefits. So go on to ssa.gov. You can apply for Social Security card replacements here. You can apply for benefits for retirement, disability benefits here, even Medicare. If you want to just start the process of planning and looking at and learning about benefits, you can find our publications here. You can find forms that you may need to submit to Social Security. You can find all of that information on our website. If you don't have a My Social Security account already, you can sign up for one here. They are free. You do need a My Social Security account when you are ready to apply for a benefit for yourself. So our website will walk you through how to create one of those accounts. If you are unable to use the website or you prefer not to, by all means, you can call and schedule an appointment. Call our 1-800 number, 1-800-772-1213, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can call and schedule an appointment at one of your local Social Security offices. You can also use the 24-hour-a-day automated phone services that are on that line. You can walk into an office if you prefer, but please keep in mind that local offices typically will make an appointment for you for a future day if you go into an office without an appointment. Local offices are open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, but again, most services require an appointment before you come in. If you do walk in, even just for a Social Security replacement card, the office will do a triage with you and determine why you're there. Do you have a dire need? Are you experiencing homelessness? Do you have a significant illness that's preventing you from waiting for an appointment later on in the week or later in the month, for example? They will try to see you as quickly as possible, but they may have to make you an appointment for a future day. The My Social Security account is really a very important planning tool, whether you're looking at future retirement benefits, applying for Medicare, if you've already gotten a benefit from Social Security and you want to manage the benefits that you get from Social Security, if you want to apply for disability benefits, you want to update your direct deposit information, change your address, get proof of a benefit that you get from Social Security. All of this can be done through the My Social Security account. So this is our online portal that people can sign up for as long as you're at least 18, you have a Social Security number, and you have an email address. Your email address becomes part of the sign-in process when you create a My Social Security account. So you do have to have your own email address. Now, there are some people who created a My Social Security account many, many moons ago, and we are transitioning people to newer style accounts. So if you are somebody who's had an old account for many years, you will find out that when you sign into your My Social Security account, we're going to transition you over to a newer account through a credentialing partner called login.gov. So just follow the steps along and you'll see that we are going to help you move from your old username and password over to a new login.gov email and password that you will use to sign in to your My Social Security account. Again, you can use your My Social Security account as long as you're at least 18 or older and you have that email address and a Social Security number. You can create one. And you can view your online estimates of your benefits. You can take a look at your earnings record that Social Security has for you. You can take a look at some of the medical information that we have for you when you apply for your disability benefit. You can check the application status as you are waiting on a decision to be made. So after you have applied, you can go back into your My Social Security account and take a look at where we are at in the process. You don't have to call to find out, when is my case going to be approved or denied. You can take a look at that. You can order replacement Social Security cards online if you have a My Social Security account. And once you're getting a benefit, you can get proof of those benefits here. So this is really a huge time saver for people who also get Medicaid or food stamps perhaps. When they need to prove what their benefit information is here, they can print that off. Also, if you happen to become a representative payee for somebody who gets a Social Security benefit, you can use your own My Social Security account to view and print off proof of benefits for the Social Security or the SSI beneficiary. You can use your own My Social Security account to update direct deposit for somebody getting Social Security if you are their payee. You can also do payee accounting if you are somebody who has to do that. for the person that is getting a benefit. So the being representative payee, we allow you to use your own My Social Security account to do quite a few things on behalf of that beneficiary. So it's a good idea to have one of these accounts for yourself so that you can do information or do things online for yourself, but also if you are a rep payee for somebody. All right, with that behind us, let's move on to disability benefits. There are two different types of disability benefits that Social Security administers. So there is Title II of the Social Security Act and Title 16 of the Social Security Act. Title II is SSDI, or Social Security Disability Insurance. That is the benefit people get when they work. They pay taxes on their wages into the FICA system, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, or the Social Security tax that you pay on your wages. And by paying those taxes on your wages, you're earning credits towards your insured status to be eligible for benefits like Social Security disability insurance. You also are earning credits towards your eligibility for your Medicare. You don't have to wait till you're 65 or older to get Medicare if you are found to be disabled and you get Title II or SSDI benefits. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now, Title 16 of the Social Security Act is SSI, Supplemental Security Income. That's in the red bubble on this slide. This is more of a needs-based benefit. So this is not based on anybody's work history. This is a benefit that is payable to people that are 65 or older, or people of any age who are found to be disabled by Social Security's rules, as long as they have limited income and limited resources. So there are some extra rules that go along with the SSI program that have to do with limited income and limited resources that are in addition to either being old enough to get SSI or being found to be disabled. And people who get SSI get Medicaid. So the rules are very similar. People are often categorically eligible for both programs. If you get SSI, you're also going to get Medicaid. So we'll talk about each one of these separately here in just a little bit. But first, we just want to make sure you realize that we administer both programs. And even though their acronyms are similar, they're very different programs. Whether you're applying for SSDI or SSI, you're going to have to be found to be disabled by Social Security unless you're over 65 for the SSI program. So what is Social Security's definition of disability? Well, it's different if we're talking about children under 18 or adults, that's 18 or older. So on the screen is the definition of disability for an adult. So this is anybody 18 or older. Even if somebody's still in high school, still living with their parents, once you're 18, you are an adult for our definition of disability. The definition is that you have a medical condition or a combination of impairments that prevent a substantial gainful activity for at least a year, or your condition is expected to result in your death. So you have a mental or a physical condition or a combination of conditions that keeps you from working for at least a year, or it's expected to result in your death. So substantial gainful activity is our big word for work. So it's a monetary amount that we use to determine whether somebody is working and earning above a certain threshold. In 2025, substantial gainful activity is $1,620 or more in gross wages. If a person's condition is blindness, then they can make more than that. $2,700 or more is considered substantial gross income. But for non-blind individuals, $1,620 or more is considered substantial gainful activity. So that means if you are applying for disability benefits, whether it's SSI or SSDI, and you are working and you're making at least that amount of money, you are not meeting our definition of a disabled individual as an adult because you are making substantial gainful activity, okay? Now, for children, we have a little bit of a different definition. For children, we're talking about under the age of 18. And it's not whether or not a child is working, but is a child first of all, we will look at, is a child working? But we are also looking at, does a child have a severe and marked limitation in at least two domains of functioning when we compare that child's conditions to other children who don't have those conditions. So the different domains of functioning are things like acquiring and using information, attending and completing tasks, or interacting and relating with others. Things that have to do with their health and their physical well-being. So does a child have severe and marked limitations in at least two of those domains? And how is that affecting their functioning, their growing as a child? And how does that compare to other children their age who don't have those same impairments? Now, if a child is getting SSI and they turn the age of 18, a new medical decision has to be made because at age 18, we consider them an adult. So it's very important to understand that some children will lose their benefits at age 18 because the medical condition they were found to be disabled with may not qualify them as an adult under the adult definition. It may not be a medical condition that prevents them from working and earning substantial gainful activity. So there is a different definition between adults and children. So that's the distinction we need to make sure we make. Back to comparing SSDI and SSI. So let's talk side by side here. SSDI is on the left and SSI is on the right. SSDI does have some retroactivity to it, whereas SSI does not. So what does that mean? That means if you apply for a benefit, we may be able to find a person disabled in the past for SSDI and pay retroactive benefits for up to 1 year. So they may have been not working for some time, or their earnings might have been below substantial gainful activity for a period of time. We may be able to find them to be disabled in the past and pay them a retroactive benefit on SSDI. We do not do that with SSI. So the application date is very important when somebody applies. There are dependent benefits potentially payable under the SSDI benefit. That means when somebody becomes disabled getting the SSDI benefit, their spouse and or their children might also be eligible for a benefit. So when you have seen a child receiving a benefit from their parent's work record, this is an SSDI benefit. They're not receiving a benefit because they are disabled. They're getting a benefit off their parent's earnings record. That is a dependent benefit. So that's payable off of an SSDI benefit. It is not payable off of SSI. We differentiate what time of the month we make payments too. So SSI is always paid on the first of the month. SSDI payments are made either on the third of the month or on Wednesdays, depending upon when a person is born. So we either pay the second, third, or fourth Wednesday of a month. So that's different. The benefit amount that somebody gets when they get SSDI, that's based on their work and their earnings. So everybody gets a different amount of money when they're getting SSDI, just like a retirement benefit is different for everybody. But SSI is based on a federal benefit rate, or FBR. This year, that's $967. That's the maximum someone can get on SSI. Some people get all of that, and some people get part of that. SSDI is insurance, as I mentioned before. You earn this insurance because you pay taxes on your wages into that Federal Insurance Contribution Act, the FICA tax that you pay on your check, on your paycheck. You do not pay taxes on your wages to become insured for the SSI benefit. SSI is needs-based. It's public assistance. No work history is needed. It's funded by the general tax revenues. So this is why you see children eligible for this benefit, because they have not worked and earned their insured status yet for a benefit based on work history. Back to the SSDI column, the benefit amount is not based on other income that you have. Like maybe you get a VA benefit or workers' compensation or unemployment or rental income. That's not going to affect how much you get as an SSDI benefit. The amount of resources you have or your living arrangement or your spouse's income is not going to affect what you get on SSDI. What you get from SSDI is based on your work, your earnings history, whereas SSI is based on whether or not you have limited income, limited resources. What is your living situation? Do you live with your spouse? Is your spouse working? Does your spouse own resources? Those will affect how much you can get from SSI. So very different programs. And again, SSDI, you end up with Medicare. SSI, you end up on Medicaid. Some people get both SSDI and SSI, and you'll see that they get both Medicare and Medicaid. Another name that somebody along the way made very similar, but very different programs. Okay, so let's first talk about SSI. We want to break down each program independently and give you some more information about each one. So this is some factors of SSI eligibility. We like to think of it like a three-legged stool. The eligibility criteria is based very strongly on whether or not you're found to be disabled by our definitions of if you're a child or an adult, and then whether or not your income is below a certain standard, your resources are below our limits, and whether or not you live in a living arrangement that allows us to make a payment to you while you're eligible for SSI. So let's talk about each one of those legs on the stool. For income, pretty straightforward. We will look at any income that a person applying for SSI gets. So we will ask them about any wages, any net earnings from self-employment, any other Social Security benefits they might get off of their own earnings or a parent's record, maybe a veteran's benefit, unemployment, workers' comp, child support, even cash from family or friends. Any income at all that somebody gets can be countable towards the SSI program. The waiver funds that somebody could get is not countable income for SSI. So let me reiterate that waiver funds are not countable income for SSI, but pretty much everything else is countable income for SSI. So we will ask, what other income do you have? Because that income is likely to decrease the amount of SSI you get paid. Now, when we talk about income, it's important that we talk about parental income if we're talking about a child applying for SSI. Children who live with their parents' income and resources can affect the eligibility for that child. And when we're talking about children, we're talking about under the age of 18. So parental income and resources are countable for a child applying for SSI up through the age of 18, as long as they live in the same household. If they don't share the same household, though, then we don't look at the parent's income and resources. So if a child lives with their grandparents or a foster care or a relative of some other kind, the parental income and resources do not come into play. There is not a real neat income level for you to see, but there are some screening tools where you can plug in some different numbers, and based on your income and what source that income is, how many other people live in the household, etc., you can kind of find out if the child might be potentially eligible for SSI. When in doubt, though, always just put in an application and let us make a determination for you. Resources, again, this is kind of cut and dry. We are going to look at, do you have resources when you are applying for SSI, and are those resource limits below our limits that we establish? So an individual is only allowed to have no more than $2,000 in available liquid resources every month. So it's a pretty low amount of resources. Somebody has to have exhausted most of their available money before they might be eligible for SSI. We're going to ask an applicant about all their bank accounts that they have, stocks and bonds, cars, life insurance, all of their property that they might have their name on. Now, we do exclude some resources from this countable resource list. We exclude the home in which a person lives. We exclude one car for a person, but we do count the value of the other cars. So if you happen to be a co-owner on multiple cars, the equity value in those extra cars beyond one will count towards that $2,000 limit. We allow you to have burial plots for yourself and your family. We allow you to set aside resources for burial. And you are allowed to have money in ABLE accounts, up to $100,000. If you're not familiar with an ABLE account, we would like you to check those out. These are alternatives to normal, regular checking and savings accounts, if you will. These are more of an investment style account, like a college investment account, where you can put money, and it is not countable towards programs like SSI resource limits. So it is a way for you to hang on to some money and use it towards the disabling condition for the person they may have. So check that out. Go to stableaccount.com and you can learn more about those types of accounts. But again, the individual limits are pretty low, $2,000 a month. Couples limits are $3,000. When we're talking about children, if they live with a parent, we also allow the parent for an additional resource limit, but it still remains very low. So resources have to almost be exhausted before somebody is eligible for SSI. And then living arrangement is the final leg on the stool for SSI. SSI payments will vary depending upon where somebody lives. So we look at, do they live alone? Do they pay for their own shelter costs? Or do they live with somebody else and they don't pay their fair share of the living costs where they live? When somebody is living in a household of someone else and they are not paying to live paying anything to live there, then the SSI payment is typically reduced by 1/3 of the amount of the SSI benefit rate. So instead of somebody being eligible for that maximum $967 a month, instead they're going to get 1/3 less than that because they don't have shelter expenses to pay, or they're not paying their fair share of living expenses. Now, we can make changes in living arrangements anytime living arrangements change. So if when somebody applies, they are living in somebody else's household, not paying their shelter expenses because they don't have an income, but then once they get an SSI check, they are going to pay their rent, then we can change the living arrangement and boost the SSI payment. Generally, people who live in institutions like a hospital or a nursing home or jail, they don't get any SSI because while they're in that institution, all of their shelter costs and their food is being provided to them. They don't need the SSI benefit to purchase those items for the month that they are in that living situation. Once that living situation changes, the person needs to notify us and we can change the living arrangement and again start the SSI payment back up. So living arrangements change constantly when people are on SSI because we are always changing addresses, changing living arrangements and that sort of thing. Age 18 is critical for people who get SSI. Again, as I mentioned, parental income and resources are countable for kids that are applying for SSI as long as they live in their household. So when mom and dad have an income or significant resources, they may apply for their child who is disabled, but the child might not meet eligibility criteria because mom and dad's income makes that child ineligible, or mom and dad's resources make the child ineligible. So at age 18, we stop looking at mom and dad's income and resources because at age 18, everybody's considered an adult, even if they're still in high school. Now that means that we have to have every adult sign their own application unless they have a legal guardian. So that poses a different situation, right? So at age 18, your child who is now applying for a benefit, because now they've waited until they've become an adult, so mom and dad's income and resources are no longer countable, they now, though, have to sign their own application. So you can help them with the application process, but they're going to need to be involved and sign their application with us. and sign their own medical release, unless you've gone through the process and you already have legal guardianship through the court system. And if your child is getting SSI and they turn the age of 18, we are going to do a medical redetermination to make sure we can keep that benefit going into adulthood. Because remember, we would have found the child disabled under the child rules. Now we have to find the adult disabled under the adult rules in order to consider the adult disabled and keep that benefit going. So lots of things go on at age 18 when we're talking about SSI. So that was a lot. So I know I threw a lot at you there for SSI. SSI has a lot of rules with it. You know, it is based on income, resources, living arrangements, whether or not you're found to be disabled, if you're a child, if you're an adult, if you live with your parents, or if you don't. There's a lot of rules to that. We always talk about that one first because that one is the hardest to understand. SSDI is a lot easier. Remember, SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance. It's based on work. It is not based on financial need. So you get this benefit if you have worked and you have earned enough credits to be insured for this benefit. So this is the benefit for people who have worked. It's based on work credits. In 2025, you earn a credit when you earn $1,810 in earnings that are covered by FICA, or Federal Insurance Contribution Act, the Social Security tax. You can only earn up to 4 credits per year. So once you've earned $7,240 in 2025, you've earned your 4 credits. So even if you make $100,000, you're only going to earn 4 credits this year. The number of credits that you need in order to be what we consider insured for SSDI is based on how old you are when you actually apply for your disability benefit and tell us you became disabled. So if you are applying and you are a younger person, you might only need a few amount of credits. But if you are an older person, then you will have had to have worked more years in your life and earned more credits. So if you are under 24, you really only need about 1.5 years of work, which equates to about 6 credits. Remember, you can get 4 per year, so 1.5 years would be 6 credits, and that would be if you're under 24 when you're claiming a disability. If you're over 31 when you claim to be disabled, then we're going to be looking at your work history to see if you have been working 5 out of the last 10 years. So we're going to be looking at, have you earned at least 20 credits out of the previous 40 possible credits? So sometimes people come and apply for disability insurance. You know, let's say I apply right now, I'm 50, and I apply for disability insurance. Well, I haven't worked in 20 years. I've been staying at home taking care of my family. But now I have fallen, I hurt my back, and I can't go back to work. I probably am not going to be eligible for SSDI because when they look at my work history, they're going to see that I have not worked 5 out of the last 10 years. I don't have any credits earned in that period of time. So although I may have some work credit previous to that, I don't have any in the most recent 5 out of the last 10 years. So this is where you see people that are uninsured and not found to be disabled under our rules, or they are not eligible under our rules, not because of a disability, but because they don't have enough credits under our rules. So there are different things that go on because of this program. Now, the amount of SSDI that somebody gets, again, is going to vary based on their work history. You know, Theresa and I have made different amounts of money over our careers. So if she were to become disabled, her SSDI would be a certain amount. If I became disabled, my SSDI would be a different amount. They would not be the exact amount. You can look in your My Social Security account and it'll show you what your estimate would be if you became disabled. I mentioned that SSDI pays dependent benefits, and that could be to your spouse and to your children. So spouses that are normally age 62 or older can get a benefit, and minor children that are under 18 can get a monthly benefit. We can also look at paying student children that are between 18 and 19 if they're still in high school. So those folks can get a benefit just because, like, the applicant has been found to be disabled. So if I apply for SSDI and I am awarded that benefit, then my spouse, who's at least 62, could potentially be eligible for money, and so could my minor children or my high school age children up to age 19. If I have an adult disabled child, my disabled adult child might also be eligible if my child who is older than high school but has been disabled since before 22 could also become eligible for a benefit off of my work record, and that's the disabled adult child benefit. Basically, a dependent can receive up to 50% of my benefit as long as I'm alive. Once I pass away, my dependents could receive up to 75% of my benefit instead. So there's more benefit paid out once I am deceased and no longer in the mix. When a dependent child turns 18, some things change. So remember, if I start receiving SSDI and I have a child who's 17 getting a benefit off of my record, not because they're disabled, just because they are a minor child, they're getting a benefit. Well, now they're coming up on turning 18. Social Security is going to mail out a form number called the 1372 that wants to verify, are you going to graduate soon, or are you going to stay in high school beyond age 18? So if that child is getting ready to graduate, then that benefit is going to end at age 18. If not, then it can continue up to 19 if the child is still in high school. But we have to have proof of attending high school beyond age 18 in order to continue that benefit. So that benefit is going to stop unless we get this form back. So that's very important to note. And that form also asks if that child is disabled, because we may be able to go ahead and keep that benefit going beyond age 18 and beyond age 19, even if they're still in high school, if we can find them to be disabled. So if the child has their own disabling condition, then this is where we move into the disabled adult child benefit, or the childhood disability benefit. You may have heard that term. Either way, they're both the same benefit. So this is where we pay a child a benefit off their parent's work record, even though the child, quote unquote, is an adult now. So this allows us to pay that child's benefit to the adult of the parent who is either deceased, retired, or disabled. So that's the catch. The parent has to be deceased, retired, or disabled for this child to collect this benefit from their record. Now, the DAC, or the Disabled Adult Child Benefit, is a form of SSDI. It's not based on those needs-based parameters of SSI. There are some times where a child is getting SSI and their parent becomes disabled or retired or passes away, and that person gets moved over to the Disabled Adult Child Benefit. This changes the status of Medicaid. And there is a rule out there, or an act, the 1634, which requires Medicaid to keep that person on the rules of Medicaid just like they've always been, even though they now have an income that's higher than SSI. So it keeps them categorically eligible for their full Medicaid, even though now their income technically makes them no longer on the SSI roll. So just make sure that you're aware of that 1634 rule if you have somebody that moves into that Medicaid issue with the DAC benefits that go along with those. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Theresa to talk about the application process from here.
All right, before we do that, why don't we just take a moment? I'm going to kind of check in here with Mallory for a moment to see if there's any questions that we're getting.
We do not have any questions on Facebook. Are there any folks, attendees that have questions? There is a Q&A in which you can, at the bottom of your screen, in which you can ask questions about the eligibility or anything that Kelly just mentioned.
Well, what I think we'll do then is I'm gonna go ahead and leave my camera off. It just seems to be pulling a little bit on my audio feed, so I'm just gonna leave that off. I will come back on when we do some open after that. So let's talk about the application for those who are under the age of 18.
Okay, so when you go online to apply, this is what one of the screens will look like. And when you're applying for a child, you're applying for somebody under 18, and you're going to tell the system that. So you see the little bubbles here. You're going to say a child under 18, and you're going to click on apply for SSI. And basically what you're going to do is a hybrid type of application. You will fill out the childhood disability report on the internet, and then you'll call us to schedule an appointment. So you'll call the 1-800 number, and you'll schedule an appointment to finish that SSI application. If for some reason you're unable to do any part of this on the internet, you certainly can just call the 1-800 number and schedule the appointment. They will do everything with you on the phone. Otherwise, it's helpful if you can do things online first and then call to finish the appointment. When you call to finish the appointment, that appointment only takes a couple of minutes versus about an hour and a half if you do all of it on the phone with us. So when you're applying for an adult online, you would instead, on that previous screen, click on an adult 18 or older, and that would walk you through some different steps. So you would be clicking on apply for benefits, and then you would say you'd be applying for an adult. And that is going to walk you down the pathway of filling out the application for an adult. You don't have to call us to fill out anything over the phone for adults. Most everything can be done online when we're talking about adults. If, again, you are not interested in doing things online, you can always call, schedule an appointment. It's important to note that everybody that's 18 or older will be applying for both SSI and SSDI. So whether you think you're just going to apply for SSI, we are automatically going to look at SSDI also for everybody that's 18 or older. Because remember, you need very little work history for somebody to be eligible for SSDI. So once you're 18, we're automatically going to look at that and see if somebody might meet that criteria. One of the other questions that you will see when you're online is this one. It's going to say who is completing this application. Everybody that's 18 or older, as I mentioned, has to fill out their own application and sign it. So you are allowed to help somebody apply. You can be the scribe for them and do things for them online if you want. You can even help them if you do everything over the phone. However, depending upon how you answer the question here online, the system is going to determine whether or not you need to sign into a My Social Security account or not. So if you answer the question, I am applying for myself, then the computer assumes that I am sitting here applying for myself. And then the computer is going to make me sign into a My Social Security account so that I can be digitally identified and I can therefore sign my own application. If, however, I am saying I am helping someone else who is not with me, and therefore they cannot sign the application, then I won't be required to sign in to a My Social Security account. However, an application will be mailed to the applicant to sign and send back. So depending upon how you answer this question is going to be resulting in whether or not the applicant can actually sign things as they go along or not. So again, you only want to click, I am filing for myself if the applicant is actually sitting there. If they're not with you, don't say that. Go ahead and just say, I am helping someone who's not with me. And that way the system will know to mail an application to the person to let them sign it and send it back. There's a question in the application as you go along that says, would you also like to apply for SSI? You want to make sure you say yes to that question if in doubt. If you're not sure if you're eligible for SSI based on income and resources or not, then say yes to it. Don't say no to it if you're not positive about it. Remember, legal guardians have to be involved if you are signing on behalf of somebody else. Otherwise, everybody 18 or older has to sign their own application. If you're wanting to get information for somebody else, then we have a form called the SSA 3288 that you can get online that lets us get a consent to release information. So adults have to release information, even for their parents, in order for us to give out information about themselves, unless legal guardianship is involved. After we've taken that application, the application gets forwarded to DDS, which is the State Disability Determination Services, and that's an agency within the Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or OOD. So in Ohio, we contract with OOD here in the state of Ohio to make the medical decisions for Social Security. So no matter where somebody applies in Ohio with Social Security, all the claims go to OOD, and the DDS agency there makes our medical decisions. That DDS is going to contact all the medical providers and schools and everybody else that you tell us about on your application, and they're going to use that information to make the medical decision. If somebody doesn't have enough information in their application for us to gather, you might be asked to attend a consultative exam so that a doctor can report back to Social Security to make a well-informed medical determination. And also, if somebody applies and they don't meet the most basic requirements for our disability programs, like let's say they apply for SSI, but they have $10,000 in a checking account, they're not eligible for SSI. Even if they're disabled, they have too much money in resources to be eligible for SSI. We would never pay them a penny in SSI with that kind of a resource limit. Or if they apply for SSDI, but they've never worked before, we would never pay them SSDI benefits. So if somebody is not eligible on those most basic requirements, we won't send these claims for a disability determination. Somebody has to be potentially eligible before we can make those medical determinations. Typically, DDS will make medical decisions within about 6 to 7 months. This is an older slide, so that information is a little bit old. It's usually right around 250 days, 230 days that decisions are being made. Any evidence that you are providing to Social Security with your application, we will send that up to DDS for them to make their medical decision. And again, you might be required to attend a doctor's appointment locally for a consultative exam to provide more information if DDS needs more information in order to make an informed medical determination. There is criteria that Social Security is looking at to determine somebody disabled based upon what's called an impairment listing. So you can look at what this is. This is in a book that's available online. It's published for professionals to see, but everybody can look at it. And so the website is here on that second bullet point. And you can look up what the definition is for a medical listing. So any condition that you want to look up, you can find out what is Social Security looking at to find somebody disabled based on that medical listing. And if the person's condition does not meet that listing exactly, then more evidence may be needed to determine whether or not that person is able to go to work or what the severity of their functioning is, etc. So it's a good thing to take a look at if you're always kind of questioning, you know, what is it that they actually want to see in my medical records, or how severe does my functioning or my limitation have to be before I can be found to be disabled. This is the criteria that you want to take a look at. Social Security does sometimes make faster decisions based upon a person's condition. and the severity of their condition. Oftentimes people will tell us that they have a terminal illness or they have a medical condition that will not improve, maybe a chromosomal disorder or something along those lines. Those oftentimes can be made fast-tracked decisions where you can see a decision within days or weeks rather than somebody waiting months for a medical decision. So it just depends on the type of condition somebody has. If a person is denied medically for their claim, then they'll get a letter from Social Security after however long it takes to make that medical decision. And they have 60 days to file an appeal. So whenever that medical decision comes out, if you disagree with it, you can file an appeal to it. So even if you've been found to be disabled, but you disagree with the date Social Security found you to be disabled as of, you can appeal that if you want to. The quickest way, again, is going to be to go online and file that appeal. But if you don't want to do things online, you can always call our 1-800 number and schedule an appointment to appeal with us over the phone. You could walk into an office and ask for information from the office, etc. We just want you to be sure that you understand it's a 60-day appeal period. Outside that 60 days, then you're going to have to look into reasons for good cause. Why should Social Security allow more time, for beyond 60 days to allow you to appeal that decision? And sometimes there is reason for that, but that's beyond the 60 days. Okay, and then what happens if your claim is approved? Many claims are approved. So regardless of what you hear, that claims are always denied and why should I bother? That's not true. A lot of claims are approved. So let's talk about SSI. If you apply for SSI and it is approved, we usually have to do a second interview with you as the applicant before we can start your payment up. So originally when we took your application, we just asked you to tell us things. We took your allegation about what your income is, what your resources are, what your living situation is. Well, now that you've been medically approved, we have to verify those things. So remember, 4 months might have gone by, 6 months might have gone by. So now we're going to go back and say, now show us proof of your income in the month of January. Show us your proof of your bank account in the month of February so that we can verify all of that information. So we're going to tell you when you apply, hang on to all of your pay stubs and your bank account statements and all of that kind of thing, because if you get approved, we're going to want to see all of that. We also may tell you that you need a representative payee for us to make payments to. If there's something that DDS finds while they're looking at your medical condition that indicates maybe you're not capable of managing your own money, then we may do that. So that's all going to take place before we make a payment to you on SSI. What about SSDI? SSDI, again, is going to be based on your work history. So the amount of money that you're going to get paid is not based on your income you told me you were making or the resources that you have. So I don't need to do a second interview with you after you've been medically approved, but I may need to talk to you to get your bank account information if I didn't get it ahead of time. I may need to talk to you if there's children that you told me that you have, or a disabled adult child, or a spouse. We may need to do some follow-up information to make sure that everybody gets paid a benefit now that you've been medically approved. But there's no issues with things like what's your other income or your other resources or things like that. Remember, we're going to usually just start your payments on SSDI because we have already figured out what you could get based on your work history, not based on anything else. And 24 months later, Medicare is automatically going to start for you. So after you've become entitled to your Social Security disability insurance benefit, Medicare starts. So all of that information is in the award letter that you get from Social Security after Social Security makes its definition or its determination of disability for you. A letter is mailed out saying you're approved and here's what your benefit is going to be. Here's when it's going to be paid according to your date of birth, etc. People always ask, can I get both SSI and SSDI? Yes. The maximum SSI payment, if all you get is SSI, is $967 a month. However, if you get both SSI and SSDI, we can pay you an extra $20 a month. And that's because we disregard $20 of your SSDI income when we calculate how much we can pay you in SSI. So it gives you a boost and it gives you an extra $20 a month. So if you get both SSI and SSDI, you will get $987 a month, excuse me. So an example, if Ryan is collecting $600 a month from SSDI based on his work history, and he has no other income, and he meets all the other factors for SSI, so his resources are below the limits, he lives in his own home, he pays his own rent, but he's also going to be eligible for SSI, and he's going to collect another $387 a month in SSI. So altogether, he would collect $987 a month. But what if Ryan is found to be disabled and he's going to get $1,400 a month in SSDI? Well, that's more than he could get in SSI. So there is no SSI. He's going to get the higher payment, which is SSDI. Now, one thing though, he could get SSI while he's waiting on SSDI to start. SSDI has an automatic 5-month waiting period. So that means when somebody is found to be disabled under the SSDI rules, it can't start until 5 months have passed or elapsed after the date they were found to be disabled. So if somebody is found to be disabled as of today, then their benefit can't start until 5 months from now. Well, if their income and their resources are low enough, they might be able to go ahead and get SSI during that 5-month period that they wait until their SSDI benefit can start. So that 5-month waiting period is just something written into the law with SSDI. SSI doesn't have that waiting period. So we do that a lot where somebody is getting both benefits. They get paid SSI until SSDI starts, and then SSDI is too high to continue the SSI. We also do continuing disability reviews for people after they've been getting Social Security. So somebody who's been getting SSI or SSDI, they don't just get on it and stay on it for the rest of their life unchecked. The law requires Social Security to perform these continuing disability reviews once at least every 3 years, but sometimes we don't do them until every 5 to 7 or 10 years if their medical condition is not expected to improve. So how often we do them is going to be dependent upon how expected the person's condition is to improve. Benefits will stop if Social Security determines that somebody is no longer disabled, or if somebody refuses to turn in the paperwork and conduct the continuing disability review. So what we do is we mail out paperwork and say, your number is up, it's time for you to do the continuing disability review, and you need to return the paperwork to us. If somebody fails to do that, benefits will stop. So we don't want people to be fearful of it. It's normal. We have to do this with everybody to make sure that people are still within the guidelines of being disabled under Social Security's definition. And remember, all children are going to be reviewed at age 18 if they're getting SSI and they turn 18. Remember, we're going to do that automatically. And SSI has another type of review with it, which is the SSI redetermination that is not medical. So SSI, remember, has all those rules with income and resources and living arrangements. Well, in addition to looking at their medical condition periodically, we're also going to have to look at income, resources, and living arrangements periodically. The law requires us to do that. Typically, we do this about once a year, sometimes more often, but typically about once a year or so. Usually what we do is we send a letter out to somebody and say, you're getting SSI. We need to do a non-medical review, meaning we're not looking at any of the medical information. We just need to review the fact that we have correct income, resource, and living arrangement factoring into what we are paying you right now. And so we do a review. We usually mail a letter, give them an appointment date and time, and do things over the telephone. Again, if somebody fails to complete that redetermination, we will stop the benefit. So we want to make sure people are keeping us up to date with any changes in income, resources, and living arrangements, because all of that affects how much a person gets paid each month in SSI. So we don't want to wait until the redetermination is done. They should be telling us every month if something changes. And they are given this information at the time that they are approved for SSI. People can work and get SSI and SSDI. So a lot of people who are disabled still want to try to work or work a little bit, or some people want to work and get off the benefit altogether. Some people want just help with insurance and they don't want a monetary benefit anymore, but they want to keep their Medicaid or they want to keep their Medicare. So there are a lot of work incentives and work employment rules and things like that that are out there to help people go to work and keep all or part of their benefits from Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, depending upon the level of income that they are making through work. So work incentive rules make it possible for people to test their ability to work and not lose their income, their benefits for a while. Eventually they might, depending upon, again, how high their income gets, how long they're able to work, that sort of thing. The rules are different, whether somebody's getting SSI or SSDI. You can look at a book that we publish online. It's called the Red Book. So in the second bullet there on this screen is the link to the Red Book, showing you where you can go find all of the different work incentives and the employment supports that are out there for people getting SSI and SSDI. There are special rules for students who want to work and keep getting their benefits. There are special rules for people that are blind. There are special rules for people that just get SSI or just get SSDI. So it's a good book to take a look at if you're wanting to go back to work. We always have to know about a person's work. So there is information in this book, and you'll be given this information at the time of application or at the time that you report to us that you have a job, about how you need to keep reporting your income to us, because we have to keep track of how much a person's making so that we can be sure that you're still falling within the guidelines of being a disabled individual to collect a benefit from Social Security. There's a form that we use. It's called the SSA 821. And you can take a look at that form online if you like, and that'll let you see what kind of information we're gathering when somebody reports to us that they have returned to work. Okay, let me bring Theresa back in. Hopefully we can hear her. We hear you intermittently, Theresa. I don't know what my speaker's like.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the same.
I'm so sorry, everybody, for my audio issues, but Kelly, thank you. Thank you for carrying the load for us. I'm going to check first with Mallory to see if we have had anything come up on our Facebook live chat or just kind of online chat in terms of questions.
We, I think, are still good. I don't see any comments on our live, and there's nothing in the Q&A. So you all are very thorough in your explanations so far.
Well, we try. And you know what? I think Kelly really brought it home for us. When you're talking about young adults, okay, so a lot of your clients and all of you that are joining us as families, you could be going through various types of disability benefits. You could start out with your 18-year-old on SSI, and then your 18-year-old could start working and get credits, and then they go on SSD. They might get both. They might get SSI and SSD. And I remember, like Kelly mentioned, that application is going to screen for everything. But then maybe you retire, or God forbid, somebody passes, you or your spouse pass away. Then that child, as Kelly explained, could be pulled in to get a disabled adult child benefit off your retirement or off of your record. And they may go totally off of SSI. Kelly said they may go from the 967 range, like into, 1,500 or more. That's the normal part of the process. So we just want to make sure that we kind of like give you some of that exhale to be like, it's normal. Your child could go very much from going SSI, SSD, and then getting that disabled adult child record. We just want you to realize that medical reviews can happen any point. That is a normal part of the process. Do not ignore a medical review. Fear not. Kelly mentioned that is normal part of the process. And we can't stress enough that, yes, there are opportunities to work. But you guys, you've got to stay on top of it, because inherently our program is saying you are getting a disability benefit because you can't perform work. Okay, there's limits. Yeah, you can do some. But we want you to keep monitoring that, and we really want you to check in. You have families, have wonderful resources there with you guys at the county board, Mallory, that you guys can help support the families when someone goes to work, because we say, yes, we encourage you. And we've had families where they've said, I had no idea that my child could work a very part-time job and still get benefits maybe forever. Absolutely possible. But you got to keep eyes on it, right? You got to watch the work, the amount of that work. So it's not just about hours. It's about the money the person is earning in that. So we really kind of, push our families to say, use the resources that are there at the county board. Don't, really kind of educate yourself if your loved one is going to go back into the work world, that you keep eyes on things and keep us at Social Security in the loop. And one more last thing too, Kelly, you mentioned this with applications. About 40%, like 40% of our applications are approved during that first round here in Ohio. So it is not, we do not advise that a person blows off the initial application, because we've had families sometimes say, it's going to be denied anyway. So why bother throwing everything out there? No. Throw it all out there. And you want to take this very seriously. It's like, this is it. So don't think, well, I don't need to really fill out too much information. You want to go for this from the get-go, and just realize it's not true that everybody's denied. And so the more information that you give us and the more on top of it you are with those applications, the better. And if it is, you don't just start over. If it's denied, we want appeals from you if you disagree.
All right. Is there any, looks like we have some folks that are in attendance, some monitoring Facebook Live. Any questions for folks that are tuning in? And I will put your information in the chat, Kelly and Theresa. I know you had said your emails, but I will also put those in the chat as well for those that are interested.
I do have a question, and this may be way, cart before the horse because it's still at the legislative level, but has there been any talk about the impact of the SSI Penalty Elimination Act if that were to pass Congress and change those asset limits? Has there been any talk about how quickly something like that might be implemented if it does go through Congress and get signed into law?
Oh my goodness, Chase, we don't have any good comments for you on that. We really don't. All I know is that Kelly and I give our disclaimers for a reason when we start our presentations, that information could change. This is current as of the moment, right? Because some of you on the line know, especially those of you that work for counties, states, public school district entities. We had that Social Security fairness that just passed a few months ago that lifted all those windfall restrictions, right? Windfall reductions and offset. That was just a few months ago. So again, things can change on a dime. SSI resource limit, something you guys, we have talked about this for so many years, haven't we? Those of us who have been around the block. And it is not a joke that literally SSI resource limits have not changed in like 3 decades. So it is hard to wrap your mind around it. I mean, I think for most of us, it is. So we're hopeful. I mean, we get lit, but I don't know. Other than that, Chase, we
Fair
hope
enough.
for the best too. That's all I can say.
Oh, there is a Q&A. Let's see. So the question is, do adults with mild intellectual disabilities qualify?
Yeah. So that is a very real possibility. Interestingly, like most folks that get services from the county boards normally will also qualify for a Social Security benefit. But we have different qualifiers. So getting services from the county board is not saying, oh, it's the exact same thing to get you a qualification for disability. Because as we mentioned in our session today, you may have an intellect, I'll go even further out there. You may have quite a severe cognitive impairment. But if you are out there working a job that you're making $40 an hour working full time, you're going to be above substantial limit. In our Social Security world, you're not going to qualify. So we always tell our families, it's not just about the condition, it's can you work with that condition, right? Because think of it beyond a cognitive. I mean, people have physical ailments, right? That can be very, very serious. We know you've got the condition. But if you're working, you're not going to qualify for disability normally. So it's all about the severity of that condition in terms of keeping you from working. If it's a mild cognitive impairment, that can be tough. I mean, tons of people have mild, some borderline intellectual functioning, and they're working full time. I mean, I kind of said this is analogous to like, okay, think of even like a spectrum disorder. Millions of people are neurodivergent and they're working full time, right? So it's all about your ability to hold substantial gainful employment. That's what we're looking for. The younger you are, probably the more we think you probably can do something with work. But there could be other things. It could be, well, there's some mild cognitive functioning, but maybe there's other mental health issues. Maybe there's some physical issues in there. So sometimes it's the confluence of all those conditions that keeps the person from working. So what I would say that just summarizes that absolutely that could be part of a bigger picture, like borderline intellectual functioning when it comes to not being able to work. And if you are helping someone apply who has that situation, I would want you to throw any and all conditions out there that could be keeping that individual from working full time. But I would say to you, there's no reason for you not to apply. If you feel that those impairments are keeping that person from being able to work, we want you to move forward.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, I did put Kelly and Theresa's emails in the chat. I know this was a lot of wonderful information. So if you think of anything, they have been gracious enough to allow for questions after the fact. But I just want to give another thank you to Theresa and Kelly for being here today. We are so grateful for your knowledge and for your willingness to share it with us. And just be tuned for our next month's webinar for the Supports Through the Lifespan series. And without anything else, I just want to wish everyone a wonderful day. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your week and stay dry.